Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Jim Szafranski, who is the CEO of Prezi, the presentation software that many of your companies probably use. You may use yourself. Jim, good to see you. I want to start with the fact that you went to MIT and Stanford and asked, what did you want to be when you grew up? Was this in your sights?
I think by the time I made decisions to do MIT, computer science, and just helping people adopt technology was absolutely in my sights. I didn't have necessarily the foresight then, but even back then, my specialty was actually artificial intelligence. So.
Well, you are in the perfect position right now. But before we get to AI, because everybody's talking about it, lots of leaders are worried about it, especially, how much money they put into it, how much information they give out. Talk a little bit about some of the moments over your career that you think are instructive to the current debate. Even the fact, when I think about the bring your own device revolution, you were very much at the forefront of that.
Yeah, as I mentioned, what I really enjoyed was applying technology to helping people like with real problems. And prior to Prezi, I was at a company where we focused on helping enterprises adopt mobile technology. You mentioned, and one of the main dynamics that was happening there was what was called BYOD, bring your own device. And to be frank, when that was happening, businesses largely were like, no, you are not allowed to bring your devices to our office. And so there's a really interesting dynamic where we're trying to help these companies adopt technology. And there was this moment of kind of fear and concern.
Well, I remember when, BlackBerry, and you'd speak to them, and they were always talking to the chief technology officers, the CIOs, who were the gatekeepers of what came into the corporation. And in a sense, they seemed to miss with Apple. It was the consumers, it was others it was the workers themselves. Is that similar, you think, in terms of who the gatekeepers are? Does the latest iteration of generative AI change how this comes into the corporation?
Yeah, what we saw was people wanted to bring an iPhone to work, not to steal the company's secrets, right? They wanted to use the iPhone at work to work at different hours, or maybe work right before while they're waiting in a doctor's office that they could not schedule at a different time, and it fell during the day. And so ultimately what we saw was the employees wanted to be productive, right? And I do think it's a similar thing with AI. Certainly there are real concerns and some imaginary ones probably, right, around some of the risks of it. But largely what I see in our employees and in our customers is this desire to essentially apply it to help, right, to improve things.
Or the user
and
experience,
largely around
right?
productivity. Excuse me?
Well, I would think that a company like Prezi, the question would be, is it a threat to the business model, or does it help the business model? Maybe it's a bit of both, but let's start with, we're going to talk about, let's start with what would give you pause, because there are a lot of players out there now aspiring to do what you do and saying that they can do it because of AI.
Yeah, and so certainly AI will help people create content.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a key part of what we do at Prezi, right? Is we help people create content. But actually, what we really try to do is to allow them to express their creativity, right, and sell their ideas, right? Whether that's a salesperson using our product or a product manager pitching a new idea. And so that's a very complicated thing. And Prezi's been at this now for about 15 years almost now. Really helping people figure out how to actually connect as humans with each other. Like if you're trying to sell your idea, it's actually less about the content and it's actually more about the trust you can build. And the presentation is a tool to that. And so look-alike presentations that are just easy to make, right? That's we're not worried about that. I think you said give me pause. I mean, if I was entering this industry, I would pause before I think that, just because it's easier, faster, cheaper to make a presentation, that's going to make it more successful.
Doesn't make it better. I mean, let's give some advice to business leaders or even your customers who are coming to you, because there's a certain, it's hard to know where to prioritize resources. What advice do you have in terms of what you're doing yourself with regards to generative AI or some of the areas that are worth investing in right now?
Yeah, I think my advice would be focus on the growth side of things, which normally stems from helping your customers, right? Because I do think that if you remove friction for customers or maybe advance their ability to take advantage of everything you offer, you have the ability then to grow, acquire more market share, maybe create markets that don't exist. And I do think it's super important to focus there right now. There's definitely efficiencies to be gained through automation that AI offers, but you can go do those 3 years from now. But if you miss grabbing the market share, if you miss creating some new opportunities with your customers using some of this more generative technology, then you might be regretting it, looking back saying, darn, I can't get into that now. So I'm certainly very growth oriented on.
How you said you've worked with AI, certainly you studied it, you've worked with it throughout your career. What are you doing now? Are you working with a lot of, the third-party software? Have you built a lot internally? Give me some sense as to where your priorities lie.
Yeah, I think it's been a mix for us over time. We probably started more doing it internally the last 5 years, applying machine vision, things like gesture controls, understanding content. A lot of that we were doing ourselves, which has been nice because it's built up some capability and understanding on how we help our customers. We're definitely taking advantage now, though, of the tools that are being provided too, some of the language models that can assist us in helping build narratives for our customers too. So I think it's a mix, but our main focus is ultimately on how do we do something unique, that we bring to the table. And if I could share an example of that, like it's down to earth, is our relationship with our customers is built on the idea of community, and you can use our software for free if you're willing to share your presentations with the other Prezi users. Right, and so there's also protections in place for business content and IP if you don't want to do that, right? And that's part of our pay model. But we have this large database, probably the largest database in the world of publicly available presentation content, built by kind of thought leaders and people who are pretty advanced in how they think about communications. And so we're using that as the core of how we train our models on what kind of narratives work, what kind of presentation structures work for different things. And so that's ultimately our focus, is what we can do unique.
That's certainly been a debate within the media as to what extent is the content that we have created, the content that you and your users have created, is being used to train these models that in essence have not paid for any of that IP, that are using that IP to become nimbler, faster, stronger, more competitive. How are you thinking about that? Because that must be, there's all of that free content that you've made available is content that is now being used by some of these models.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it is correct that a model could be crawling our free database as well as we could. But I think for us, our focus is what do we know that's special on top of it, and we have a lot of expertise around how to build trust, for instance, between two people in the presentation. It goes back to even things like ethos and different models on how our brain works, how to use space really well so that people can remember content in relation to each other. So I think for us, our main focus is essentially leveraging our expertise on top of even our public data in a way that we're faster, better than anyone else.
You've mentioned a few things in this conversation that I'm not familiar with and I'm intrigued, like gesture control, using space. Can you give me, what do you mean by that? Are you actually helping people to give the presentations that they design? How do you incorporate gesture control into what you do?
As an example, so something that's evolved recently because of the pandemic is that people are presenting on screen a lot more versus in person. And so we added a functionality to Prezi called Prezi Video that allows you to bring your content on screen alongside of you. And so you can actually work like a weather person. You can have your content on the screen beside you. You can gesture to it, and we can even take actions based on your hand gestures, maybe to move content around and things like that. it just makes it way more interactive and way more engaging for your audience. And it worked great for our customers during, the heavy online usage to avoid things, like Zoom fatigue, so to speak.
Right. So that's interesting. Do you have any advice that you've gleaned yourself that what would be a couple of tips that that you're using that might not be intuitive to us from your Prezi experience?
Yeah, I would always remind everybody when you're starting a presentation that has some stakes to it. You're trying to convince somebody of something. Always make sure you get the person to want to listen to you, want to hear your story about it. So you want to personalize the conversation as best you can. Sometimes people say start with a story. Sometimes people say start with a question. But always remember that even as the technology gets more sophisticated, or you're going over a screen where it feels more transactional, make sure you spend time establishing yourself and why your interests are aligned with the other person's. And you can use on-screen content to help and things like that, whether it's just to further personalize through the imagery that you choose. But ultimately, remember you're having a conversation, and the presentation is there to help.
Right. So it's secondary. I mean, what do you think is being overhyped right now about AI? Because there are every certain times brands come along, they suck the air out of the room. Sometimes they actually suck the business out of the room too. But as you've seen all the coverage out there, and especially with regard to your own business, what are we getting wrong? Are we too paranoid? Not paranoid enough? Not opportunistic enough?
I think in closest to our industry, I think what's getting hyped is that you're basically going to just be handed content that works in a business setting. Like, I don't think that's going to work. Because again, a lot of what we talked about already is decisions and are made a lot of times also based on the trust of the team and the people and things like that. And so content is in a supportive role there. So I do think that the worry that like creating good content is somehow going to become worth zero. I don't believe that. I think that the level of content that we create today, that'll become table stakes. But the humans have limitless creativity, in my opinion, right? And so I think if you do assisted, kind of AI capability, which is what Prezis focus on, I do believe that we're still going to stay creative and we're still going to keep creating things. It's just going to be better. So I worry a lot less about somehow the ability to to build things, to create things, is somehow going to get devalued.
So what does give you pause? I mean, let's talk about even on the regulatory front. We've seen a lot of moves to try and get our arms around the technology, potentially even controlled. Is there, if I were to send you to Washington, would there be anything that you would want to see to help or hurt or shape, not hurt? Nobody wants to hurt. We're not here to hurt. Shape what's happening.
I think for me, the way I think about this is that as an industry, if we do sort of eliminate something, we should think about replacing it, right? And so by all means, I think AI will change the way we work, just like mobile devices change the way we work, right? Just like the cloud has changed the way we work. And so I think we as an industry should be responsible. And if we eliminate certain parts of the, say, jobs in our company or in an industry, I think we should be focused on replacing it. I don't pretend to have the answers, but even things like, if you pollute, you plant a tree, right? And so I think we should approach this as a common platform also, not just something that's private to one individual business, and make sure we're advancing all the parts of the ecosystem, including the ones that are hurt at least temporarily.
Well, can we drill down on that a little bit? I mean, I'm not quite sure what the fix is. What are you doing yourself? How is this latest iteration of AI impacting your own company and workforce?
Yeah, I think for us, we're definitely leveraging it not just to provide our customers with functionality to build a presentation, but to make our business better.
Right.
And But now, if we think about Prezi, we're hundreds of employees, and so we're not that big. But like if we automate some part of marketing copywriting,
Mm-hmm.
the good news for us is, it's hard to hire good, talented marketers, let alone engineers. And so the opportunity for us is essentially to say, yes, that got easier. So let's have you work on something higher order, right? And so, in the case of marketing copywriting example, just have them focus more on who the right users are, who would benefit the most of what we're doing, where do we invest next quarter in some of our marketing. So, so for us, when we have applied the technology to how we produce Prezi or how we operate the company, I mean, largely it's just given us an opportunity to go higher order with the user, with the employees. So now we're in a place where having talent and hiring it and keeping it is a lot of work. So we're, our focus is retaining and growing our talent, not.
Is that your biggest pain point as a leader, you think, the talent? Finding and
In
retaining
general,
talent?
yes, yeah. In general, I'd say absolutely. We have top talented people at Prezi that have lots of opportunities and to do things. And so for us, it's all about having the right talent and having it all aligned and retaining it. Even today, the marketplace is still pretty strong for talented people.
So give me some sense of what's around the corner for you, in terms of, you've talked about, how you're using AI, how it's going to be better presentations and some of the ways in which you're helping people to deploy it across different platforms. What's next?
I think the main thing that we're seeing and focused on is always improving our presentation format and the ability for our users to get decisions made, as you mentioned. But what we're also seeing is just an expansiveness of how work gets done, right? Typically, a presentation was thought of as in a room on the screen in front of everybody, and now a large portion of all of our users are using us in remote ways, right, over virtual work, or using us on recorded video, like things like YouTube if it's public information, or just posted on their messaging platforms if it's internal. So I think next for us is essentially just continuing to be relevant in all these new ways that work is getting done and businesses are being built. And so just creating a bunch of different channels, right, for us to be helping our users present their ideas and get decisions made.
Is there any way in which the company is going to look different, this time next year? Or when you say across these different channels, what are some of the areas you're doubling down on in terms of where you're seeing demand growing?
Yeah, I mean, a big area we're doubling down is definitely on platforms, virtual work platforms like Zoom or Microsoft Teams. We had deep relationships there because we had made moves into that area in 2019 before the pandemic, and continuing to help users engage, over those formats and bringing together sort of content and the meeting and the people. Like that's a very different concept. The screen sharing that we've all known for 20 years is not what's we're going to be doing in 2-3 years, as an example. So I think, that's an area we're doubling down on virtual work. And the other area is in this idea of, so most of our users come to us, just, to give you a little insight, is most of our users come to us and they say, I'm new to your platform. I want to do a presentation and it's due tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a hard problem to solve. Adopt new technology, learn new software, build a story, present it tomorrow. But it is solvable. And so the other place we're doubling down is just all the other aspects of building a presentation, storytelling, practice, understanding which questions you're going to get from your audience, all that type of stuff that also makes the presentation important beyond just the visual format. That's another area we're doubling.
I would imagine generative AI is really critical to making that, a more useful and frankly, more popular service. Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical. I mean, that's why we are excited about this technology. I know it's hyped a lot. But it's also, a lot of the hype is is earned because it can speed up things. And so, yeah, so for us, it's kind of taken what we used to be a tomorrow problem and it's turning it into the tomorrow opportunity, right? Where in a matter of 5-10 minutes, we can show you that you can be successful and we can move you beyond the stress of building your content to actually trying to get your goal done, right? Which is typically a decision or influencing somebody, getting somebody on their same page. And so it's super exciting for us to actually help the user with why they are doing the presentation, not just the presentation.
You know, I'm curious to come full cycle in this interview. You are on the front lines also seeing what's happening in the economy as a business leader. There's a lot of volatility right now, a lot of uncertainty over where demand is coming from, just on the enterprise side or the personal. What are you seeing? Are you optimistic about the economy? Anything that gives you concern?
Yeah, I mean, we're still in a cycle, I think, where businesses are taking more time to make technology decisions, right? I'm not the first to say that, right? And make sure that the tools that they have acquired in the last couple of years are being used and valuable. And but we don't see it though is it's not frozen, right? And so I think as long as where we succeed is when we attach ourselves to top priorities today, right? Top priorities that help our customers tap growth, connect with customers more in a more competitive, selling environment, things like that. So I'm pretty optimistic, like where it's in the sense that I think it might be like this for a while, but you can succeed in the environment we're in, and I don't see any signs to somehow it turning down, let's say, right, into a much more recession. We can do
it again. Let's say it again. So we just say it again. So into a recessionary environment, right?
Exactly.
So any advice, you have a lot of clients coming to you. They have challenges in this area and opportunities. What are you hearing? What advice do you have to others as to how to navigate this environment? Again, it's hard to know where to put your energy, your money, and your time.
Yeah, I think probably the advice I have heard time and time again, and that I probably repeat, is now's a good time to invest, right? And we have an opportunity, whether it's AI or something else in other people's industries, we have disruptive opportunities. So I think now's a really good time to understand what's important and invest in those areas. And I think most businesses are doing plenty well enough to be able to do that.
Last question for you, Jim. Is there anything that what keeps you up at night? Maybe nothing, but just curious.
I certainly sleep well, but ultimately for me, I have such passion for what we do here at Prezi and for our team here and our customers, and it's for us, we've had 140 million users on our platform. And that's good, but what I'd really love to do is expand. There's a billion out there in our market, and so if we can keep working on this tomorrow opportunities I talked about and make presenting easier, for a broader market to do really good, engaging presentations. I mean, that's what drives our company, and that's what drives me, and so that mission of helping people communicate better. I mean, ultimately, that's what would keep me up. And we know we've got an answer. We just got to keep making it more accessible, more easy to use.
Great. Thank you for joining us and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Yeah, appreciate it, Diane.